立法會主席。
The President. Questions. Question 1, Ms. Eunice Yung. Some foster parents have indicated that earlier, when they made an application to adopt a child who had been under their foster care for nearly 2 years, they were told by the Social Welfare Department that they must first relinquish the foster care for that child before they could apply for and be put on the waiting list for adoption in line with the adoption procedure. The incident has cast doubts that the existing procedures have not taken into account the child's best interests and is putting the procedure above a child's best interest. In this connection, will the government inform this Council, 1, of the policy and concepts in respect of the existing procedure for switching from foster care to adoption, and whether it has reviewed if the procedure is in line with the child's best interest and actual circumstances? 2, whether the SWD will, by drawing reference from the hearing of 2 cases on adoption in 2021, grant approval for a foster family to directly adopt a child after taking into consideration that it is in the best interest of the child to be adopted by the foster family. And 3, whether it will review the adoption ordinance and improve the adoption policy to ensure that the adoption procedure is premised on the best interests of children, such as not requiring a child to be separated from his or her foster family first while his or her foster family applies for adoption. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, the government's adoption policy seeks to facilitate the long-term welfare of children in need in their best interests. Apart from adoption service, the Social and Welfare Department arranges residential care services such as small group homes, foster homes, children's homes, etc., for children who cannot be adequately taken care of by their birth parents or families of relatives for various reasons. Where necessary, the Director of Social Welfare will become the legal guardian of a child to safeguard their welfare by making an application to the court. My reply to the member's question is as follows. 1. Adoption service is for identifying and securing permanent and stable homes for children whose parents are unable or unwilling to take care of them and provide care and nurture. Once an adoption order is granted by the court, adoptees will enjoy the rights and status legally as if they are biological children of the family, and the adoptive parents will have all rights, duties, obligations, and liabilities in relation to the custody, maintenance, and education of the adoptees. Adoption is a service for pursuing the long-term welfare of the children. On the other hand, foster care service provides temporary care arrangement for children who have not gone through the adoption procedures, reunited with families, or lived independently. It is a temporary residential service for these children to continue to enjoy family life. As adoption and foster care services are of a very different nature, the rights and responsibilities borne by the concerned families also differ considerably. Hence, the eligibility and assessment areas and standards from SWD, including financial requirements, commitment of lifelong care, etc., to the applicants are different, and the 2 services have their own matching mechanisms with different criteria. As adoption is a long-term arrangement, families that are eligible for foster care service do not necessarily meet the requirements for adoption. If a foster family wishes to adopt a child, they will have to make an application in accordance with the conditions set out in the Adoption Ordinance Cap 290 and participate in the matching exercise for adoptive children. The DSW is duty-bound to strictly follow the procedures laid down in the ordinance. Under normal circumstances, the SWD will cease the foster care service provided by the family with a view to prevent any chance for the family to influence or hinder the will of the adoptee and undermine the fairness of the matching process. It also ensures that the family can be fairly assessed by SWD or the 3 accredited bodies according to the procedures of adoption, with conditions similar to other families who have applied for adoption. The matching will be based on the best interests of the child to ensure that the most suitable long-term care arrangement can be facilitated for the children in need. SWD or related foster service organizations will clearly inform the foster families that the foster care service is a temporary care arrangement before the service commences. Foster parents are obliged to assist the adoptee to smoothly reunite with their family members or transit to an adoptive family. If the foster family is not willing to cooperate or will affect the best interests of the child, DSW as a legal guardian concerned can take relevant action, including arranging other suitable care arrangement for the child concerned. Part 2 of the question. The two court cases raised in the question are related to a local adoption case. The applicant was entrusted by the birth parents to take care of the child concerned before the adoption arrangement was made, and hence the case did not involve a foster family. 3. SWD has been fairly performing assessment and matching in line with the adoption mechanism as stipulated under the adoption ordinance and is committed to finding the most suitable adoptive family for children awaiting adoption. The government will listen carefully to the opinion of various sectors, continue to enhance the prevailing mechanism, and continue to properly handle child adoption matters by considering the best interests and long-term welfare needs of the children. Ms. Yun. The Secretary's reply did not clarify whether there is a policy on adoption under the current procedures, and the government did not explain the basis of such policies. And they did not say whether they did refer to the practice of other places such as the UK in the adoption laws. Would the government consider how they can facilitate the best interests of children? And would the criterion of having taken care of a child for 2 years be included among the conditions? Foster families can apply for adoption under the current legislation. And like I said in my main reply, for a child who is with a foster family while an application is being made, there were case laws in which some foster families could hinder the relevant adoption process, and even though the current arrangement is not part of the laws, when a foster family applies for adoption, the children would be temporarily moved to another home till the application is completed. If the foster parents become adoptive parents, well, we will also consider the best interests of the children in the long term. Mr. Paul Chair. When we apply for restaurant licenses, the restaurants cannot operate while they are waiting for a license. For unauthorized building works, if an application for new works is made, the existing works must first be demolished. I think the current arrangement for adoption is inconsiderate. Well, we are talking about children here. Why are they made to separate from their foster families? I think you should be considerate. The process has been bureaucratic. I think the same can be said for many incidents, such as the culling of hamsters. I think the process is highly considerate. Let's say if a child has been taken care of by foster parents for a long period of time, of course they would develop an affection. But like I said, not all foster parents could become adoptive parents. And if we do not remove the children temporarily, there would be more issues down the road, and this is not in the best interest of the children. For foster parents that want to become adoptive parents, then the temporary arrangement would be in place. So the foster parents know the procedures very well. And like I said, whether a foster parent can become an adoptive parent, a series of factors would be considered, and this is in line with the best interests of children. Miss Judy Chan. Thank you. For children, a stable home is of great importance. The Secretary said foster parents are aware of the temporary care arrangement. I believe we should put ourselves in the shoes of the children as well. The SWD website put up foster information on their website for children lacking care under the age of 18. They could receive foster service until they can stay with an adoptive family or reunite with their family. So how is this actually defined? We should consider the psychological state of our children if they are removed from one home and put in another family. We should not impose this burden on the foster parents. I hope more consideration can be made to the psychological state of children. We should cut back on these cumbersome processes in order to afford a suitable home for children. President, like I said, not all foster parents are appropriate adoptive parents. Let's say if the foster parents are rather old and they are not really well off, in considering the long-term interests of a child, we must first assess whether an adoptive parent is a good or a foster parent is a good adoptive parent. If a child stays with an inappropriate adoptive parent, then their best interests cannot be guaranteed. Of course, we would always have to consider the actual circumstances of a case, and there's no clear-cut standard. Mr. Jimmy, the Secretary said in terms of adoption of children, they would consider the long-term interests of a child. But I believe the Secretary would consider the same when they approve a foster application. Let's say you would not approve an application from a foster parent living in a tiny subdivided unit. So when approving the foster applications, you have already considered the interests of children. But on the long run, if the foster parents apply for application, in theory, they should be able to guarantee the long-term interests of the child. I cited some examples already, President. The requirements for foster parents are very different compared with adoptive parents. For adoptive parents, their age is very important since we are talking about the long-term care of a child. The financial capabilities are also significant. A foster home or foster parents merely have to provide short-term or temporary care for children. So not all foster parents can become adoptive parents. The temporary residential care service avoids any conflicts of interest which might jeopardize the interests of children. Dr. Chow Men Kong, please attach the microphone to your blazer. Having followed the dialogue between the Secretary and Ms. Eunice Yung, according to the current mechanism, under the current legislation, measures that are in the interest of both parties could not be facilitated. Are you going to provide an independent assessment mechanism so that desirable outcomes can be achieved for both sides? Children need the care of a family, so putting them in a children's home for a long period is not in their best interest. I do not quite follow the exact question asked, but our prime consideration is always the interests of the children. Foster care is a temporary arrangement, while adoption is permanent. So this involves professional assessment. The current procedures were not set by the government. And a number of professional service providers, through their experience, gave us advice on how we can facilitate the best interests of children. Reverend Peter Kuhn, I understand what the Secretary was saying. You said some foster parents are not good adoptive parents, but the same could be said of the opposite. So can we at least allow or give foster families the option of becoming adoptive parents? I was describing the general circumstances in my reply, and in some cases, we very much welcome the application for adoption from foster parents. Some of these foster parents are really loving. So the policy is certainly not clear-cut. We would consider different factors such as the family, the child, and others. Ms. Maggie Chan. Thank you, President. The Secretary talked about fairness, and as such, the children must be temporarily removed from the foster parents. But if we are to achieve the best or facilitate the best interests of children, fairness should not be one of the factors. If we are to temporarily remove the children from foster parents, then the children would be shoved around, and this is certainly not good for them. In terms of adoption, I believe the government and social workers could assess whether the applicant should become adoptive parents. Currently, the government's policy means that children are constantly being shoved around, and this is not in their best interest. And like I said a number of times already, the policy is not clear-cut, and we always consider the best interests of the child. Mr. Peter Chiu. I agree with what the Secretary just said. the requirements for foster parents and adoptive parents are different. Ms. Young asked a question. If a foster parent wants to adopt a child and they lodge an application, you would still assess the application. If they are deemed inappropriate, then you can reject the application. Otherwise, why are you still removing the child from the foster parents for a short period of time? So I do not quite understand the logic behind the practice. Let me give some examples. When a foster family tells the service provider that they intend to apply for adoption, then the process would begin. In some cases, the foster parents refuse to turn over the children to the service organization. They are concerned that if they are not fit for adoption, their child would be removed. So there were plenty of such cases in the past. And that is why we came up with this mechanism. We wanted the foster parents to know about this upfront. And adoption and affection would be developed between foster parents and their child. So that is why we are alerting them of the arrangement beforehand. If they are not eligible, you can turn down their application. So what the Secretary said wasn't relevant. The Secretary has answered your question.
Question number 2, Mr. Lee Chun-keung. President, it is reported that given Hong Kong's special political and geographical environment, a large number of foreign spies are doing their work in Hong Kong. Furthermore, the CIA of the U.S. has earlier announced the establishment of the China Mission Center to conduct intelligence work targeted at China and geopolitics. In this connection, will the government inform its Council 1 whether the government has communicated with the Office for Safeguarding National Security of the CPG in the Hong Kong SAR and the Hong Kong Police National Security Department with regard to strengthening anti-espionage and intelligence gathering efforts? If so, of the details, including the number of cases detected, if not, why not, and whether the relevant efforts will be stepped up. 2, given that the local legislation for combating espionage was enacted years ago, what means does the government use to combat the espionage activities in Hong Kong by foreign governments? Whether the legislation will be amended to step up efforts in combating espionage offenses, thereby safeguarding the security of the country and Hong Kong. And 3, whether it will target espionage committed by foreign governments in Hong Kong by way of enacting legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law. If so, of the details. If not, why not? Secretary for Security. President, our country has been undergoing rapid development since its reform and opening up. As China's economy and national strength continues to grow, Western countries, led by the U.S., seek to maintain their hegemony based on a zero-sum mentality and openly treat China as the target to fight against. The underlying cause is that the U.S. and the West do not have the positive mindset to understand the concepts of peaceful coexistence, such as community with a shared future for mankind, peaceful development, and prospering together as advocated by our country. The politicians in the U.S. and the West have deliberately ganged up under the guise of China threat theory in an attempt to go back to Cold War-style standoff. To achieve the goal of suppressing the development of China, the CIA has set up a China Mission Center last year to address the global challenge posed by the PRC, as it so claimed. it's also alleged that with China being the most important geopolitical threat, the CIA has to consolidate resources and capability against China, and especially recruit and train our Mandarin-speaking agents. Furthermore, the chief of the Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6, has publicly mentioned that MI6 recruits clandestine agents, i.e. spies from the eyes of the public, from all over the world, is deepening its understanding of China, i.e. infiltration, and makes things happen that would otherwise be impossible to achieve by operating in secret everywhere within the worldwide surveillance web. It can thus be seen that spies constitute an important part in the organization's covert operation. Spies achieve the goal of gaining for the country's benefits or influence in geopolitics, usually through means such as infiltrating state organizations, probing intelligence and state secrets, inciting disaffection of public servants, paying and grooming agents with a view to stirring up troubles and social conflicts, advocating anti-government beliefs, or even overthrowing state powers through violence and other means. In fact, the Snowden incident, which occurred earlier, revealed that the U.S. had conducted worldwide surveillance through the prison program. As a Hong Kong journalist reported, that Snowden had shown her documents which disclosed that the U.S. had been hacking hundreds of computers on the mainland in Hong Kong. These acts of espionage present significant threat to our national security. As an SAR of the PRC, Hong Kong has been implementing one country, two systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. Therefore, it differs from the mainland in immigration policy, regulation of economic activities, and social cultural environment. Certain countries have been attempting to engage in activities endangering our national security or foment color revolution. The serious violence since June 2019 is a vivid example. In fact, an organization named Open Technology Fund, which receives grants from the U.S. Agency for Global Media as part of the U.S., openly admitted in a Congress hearing in September 2020 that it had funded the development of communication technologies used by activists in Hong Kong. As reported by the Time magazine, rioters in Hong Kong used such technologies in encrypting their communication. The Open Technology Fund also made several payouts to groups in Hong Kong since June 2019. Separately, there were members of organizations outside Hong Kong, including the New Power Party, a pro-independence party in Taiwan, openly raising funds for the rioters and donating supplies and equipment such as helmets, gas masks, and filter cartridges. What makes Hong Kong people discern the truth is in a court case concerning offenses endangering national security, a person on trial revealed the former overseas intelligence agent and Jimmy Lai, former chairman of the Next Media, were the masterminds as well as financial backers behind the anti-China group Stand with Hong Kong, Fight for Freedom. The group had been urging foreign countries to impose sanctions on Hong Kong and mainland. The above is only the tip of the iceberg. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs earlier published the fact sheet, U.S. interference in Hong Kong affairs and support for anti-China destabilizing forces, listing 102 examples which clearly reflect the malicious acts of the U.S., including with anti-China destabilizing forces to endanger national security. In view of this, the SAR government must handle acts and offenses of an espionage nature in a targeted manner to prevent incidents endangering national security. My consolidated reply is as follows. Part 2 of the Official Secrets Ordinance provides for the regulation of espionage, which covers the prohibition of, among others, acts to approach, inspect, pass over, enter or be in the neighborhood of a prohibited place, compile information that is useful to an enemy, and obtain, collect, record, publish official secrets that are useful to an enemy. Part 3 prohibits the unlawful disclosure of protected information. In addition, Article 29 of the NSL also stipulates that the person who steals, spies, obtains with payment, or unlawfully provides state secrets or intelligence concerning national security for a foreign country is also guilty of an offense. the long-standing position of the Hong Kong SAR government is to combat espionage and endangering national security in accordance with the law. Given that these spies and agents are backed by rivals of the national level, actions must be taken to minimize the risk. To avoid impacting investigation, we should not disclose further details. Yet I can assure members that the police have all along been and will keep on collecting and analyzing intelligence in a proactive manner, as well as investigating cases endangering national security rigorously with other enforcement agencies, including conducting intelligence-led operations. Besides, the SAR government will continue to enhance information sharing and operation coordination with the Office for Safeguarding National Security of the CPG in the Hong Kong SAR under Article 53 of the NSL. Although the law enforcement agencies are committed to combating acts and offenses of an espionage nature, as Mr. Lee pointed out, the relevant legislation was enacted years ago and cannot fully address the criminal acts of espionage and theft of state secrets. In this regard, we are now actively studying with the DOJ on enhancing the official secrets ordinance in the context of Article 23 so as to better prevent espionage and theft of state secrets. We seek to commence consultation before the end of this term of administration and introduce a bill to the Council for scrutiny in the second half of this year. I hope the members will support our legislative proposals and better safeguard national security. Mr. LEE Chun-keung, President, as the Secretary said, spies and their agents are backed up by rivals of the national level. They are different from the ordinary criminals that we see in Hong Kong, and we have to pit our wits against them in many ways. So I think the strategies are going to be very important. Given the serious nature of these cases, will the Secretary inform this Council what strategies and responses does the government have up its sleeve to combat these kind of espionage activities in order to assuage the concerns of the public? Secretary. Thank you, President. To combat these espionage activities, we do have a whole series of strategies. First, we collect intelligence. We analyze the intelligence. Anti-espionage intelligence is a core part of our work. Also, together with various intelligence organizations, like the National Security Department, we will be exchanging intelligence and coordinate our efforts. Also, we will enforce the law vigorously. If there are activities of an espionage nature, we will enforce the law rigorously. And through legislation, like the Article 23 legislation and also the official secrets ordinance, we will be stepping up the provisions there in order to have more relevant provisions. Furthermore, other than mounting operations, government departments do have a role to play to safeguard their secret documents to guard against any espionage. I think we have to explain to the public the risks that we are facing in terms of espionage, and public education is going to be an important part of our work. Mr. Gary Chen. President, thank you. Mr. President, in relation to the espionage issues, we rely very much on the official secrets ordinance, which was enacted years and years ago. And we may not be able to tackle some of the espionage activities or theft of state secret. The Secretary said on many occasions that through the Article 23 legislation, we're going to be enacting a provision regarding espionage to prevent Hong Kong from being used as a base to against the nation. How does the Secretary enact the Article 23 legislation to plug the loopholes in the official secrets ordinance that is not good enough to guard against theft of state secret and espionage? Secretary, in the existing official secrets ordinance, the definition of espionage work is rather limited. It would cover the approach of prohibited places and the compilation of information that is useful to an enemy. We feel that this definition is not enough for us to combat all manner of espionage activities and all the risks arising from this. So in going down the legislative path for Article 23, we will address this inadequacy in terms of the definition of espionage, so that we will be able to combat issues like what we saw in 2019 and all the risks that will be arising in the future. Dr. Priscilla Leung. President, in his reply, the Secretary mentioned the official secrets ordinance. Dr. Leung, would you clip on the mic? The official secrets ordinance, have you considered retitling it? Because we are seeking to safeguard national secrets for espionage activities. People are soliciting information to support the enemies. So I'm wondering whether we should align ourselves with the mainland and use the same standard that is used in the mainland. At the mainland, they have different grades, and they have secret and top secret categories. Now, when you mount public education, will you be doing this so that the people of Hong Kong will understand that we are adopting the national standard in terms of anti-espionage work? Secretary. Thanks very much, Dr. Leung, for the comments. When it comes to Article 23 legislation, we will duly reflect the situation. Now, we are talking about the espionage charge under the official secrets ordinance. This is not highlighting the seriousness of espionage, so we will be highlighting the seriousness of this, and certainly will consider Dr. Leung's comments. Mr. Kennedy Wong, President, in his reply, the Secretary mentioned the Snowden incident. And I've watched the documentary on Snowden, and I feel that few in Hong Kong understand what espionage activities are. It would be hard for us to have a yardstick to measure what espionage activities are. So there may be foreign forces that, through their agents and spies, sparked the riots in Hong Kong, and to instigate seditious acts like Hong Kong independence. Would you be putting together some publicity documentary with all these materials? Are you going to put these materials together in the curriculum for better publicity? Secretary? Well, we saw what happened in Hong Kong in the recent past, and we will be reminding the people of Hong Kong what safety risks they are facing, like the Colored Revolution, which is not any ordinary incident. I think we have to deal with this. As to the publicity of the national security education, we will consider this in detail, like the way in which we publicize this. How are we going to publicize this to the members of the public? How are we going to publicize this to the professional organizations? Certainly we'll take Mr. Wong's comments into account. Mr. Ng, Dr. Johnny Ng. Well, the Secretary said that consultation will be taking place in the first half of this year for legislation to be enacted in the second half of the year. Now, this is a new thing to the people of Hong Kong. Will the administration be offering any training for the law enforcement agencies and procure the relevant equipment for this? Secretary? Well, Article 23 legislation under the Basic Law will cover the 7 crimes. 2 have been included in the Hong Kong NSL. Traitor, preventing foreign organizations from for acting in Hong Kong and preventing the collusion with foreign forces. We will be legislating on this. Now, the member talked about training for our colleagues, and that's certainly something that we will do. This is a new piece of legislation. We will step up the training to make sure everything is going to be done right, like the gathering of evidence for prosecution. We will be stepping up training. Of course, we will be procuring the right equipment for us to step up the intelligence work. Mr. Holden Chow. President, thank you very much, Secretary, for exposing all these espionage work. The U.S. has been doing a lot of this. MI6 is also mentioned in 2021. On the 30th of November, they have published a speech which highlighted that China is one of their main targets. And they've also admitted that they have been acting as spies and foreign agents. Since we have these rifles of a national level, will you be more specific in the Article 23 legislation to also tackle these anti-China agitators who have already fled to other places that are controlling what's happening in Hong Kong? Secretary, right. The Hong Kong SAR has also the extraterritorial effect. Some have fled. Some people on the wanted list have fled to other jurisdictions that are urging people to commit acts in contravention of the electoral law. And we do have the extraterritoriality effect. We will be gathering the evidence and make arrests accordingly. Mr. Ma Fung-kwok. President, thank you. Other than espionage, another national security threat is the local terrorist activities. We saw some lone wolf terrorist attack, and there are some organizations that are engaging in some bomb plots, and they are seeking to detonate the bombs at cost of law and so on. Now, the Secretary mentioned the violent means to subvert a nation. These spies are endangering national security, and as a matter of fact, they are very similar to local terrorists in this regard. So my question for the administration, does the administration know anything about any connection between these foreign forces and the local terrorists in Hong Kong? Secretary, thanks very much, President. Spies and local terrorism do have connection because, as I said, the spies are seeking to instigate hatred and intensify division in order to seize power. The grooming of local terrorism is one of the means, and they will be providing resources and technology, like how to make bombs and how to get hold of certain materials for this purpose. And they will also be offering some sort of protection, like if they get into trouble, and they will be offered protection overseas, and they will be offered the opportunity to further their education and so on. So in tackling local terrorism, we have to combat all these espionage activities.
Question 3, Dr. LO Wai-kwok. President, the Chief Executive's latest policy address has put forth a series of new ideas. Apart from developing a northern metropolis in the new territories, they also include increasing the supply of land and housing, promoting innovation and technology, improving rail and transport networks, promoting cross-boundary infrastructural connectivity, and redeveloping public rental housing estates. In this connection, will the government inform this council first, whether it will make a clear pledge that it will endeavor to remove red tape, break undesirable bureaucratic habits, reasonably streamline procedures, compress workflow, and make use of innovative technologies to enhance productivity, thereby expediting the resolution of the serious social conflicts arising from the inadequate supply of land and housing? If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Second, whether it has given holistic consideration and made detailed planning as early as possible in respect of the manpower resources required for taking forward the aforesaid projects. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. And third, in the course of taking forward the aforesaid works, how it will avoid the situation of the engineering and construction industries of overworking at times and being out of work at other times, and whether measures are in place to solve the problem of labor shortage in the construction industry. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Development. President, the Chief Executive has announced a series of long-term development plans in her 2021 policy address. In view of the tight supply of land and housing, the increasing pressure on the transport network, the aging population, the need for enhancing and expanding our medical facilities, and the keen demand for public facilities in the community, the government will roll out relevant capital works projects in a timely and orderly manner to meet the needs of social development and respond to people's demands. As the construction volume continues to grow, the construction industry's capacity will be put to the test. The industry will encounter many challenges, such as the aging workforce, declining productivity, high construction costs, and site safety issues. In response to these challenges, the Development Bureau has implemented Construction 2.0 since 2018 and led the construction industry to reform by advocating innovation, professionalism, and revitalization to uplift the productivity, capacity, and sustainability of the industry and prepare for the expected increase in workload. My reply to the three parts of the question raised by Dr. LO Wai-kwok is as follows. First, the Chief Executive announced in the policy address promulgated in October 2017 that a steering group would be set up under the Planning and Lands branch of the Development Bureau to examine how best to align and rationalize the standards and definitions involved in the development approval processes involving departments under PLB's portfolio, which is the Buildings Department, the Lands Department, and Planning Department. The steering group commenced work at the beginning of 2018. So far, we have rolled out various streamlining measures relating to 11 control parameters. The 2020 policy address set out the directive to expand the remit of the steering group by including vetting departments apart from those under PLB, with a view to reviewing more comprehensively the development-related approval processes. Other than expediting administrative procedures, we're also reviewing whether and how the various statutory processes in seeking planning applications, road gazetting, land resumption, etc. can be streamlined or expedited. The major review directions include streamlining and shortening statutory procedures, avoiding repetitive executing procedures of a similar nature, providing an express mandate for departments to process different procedures in parallel, and rationalizing controversial or ambiguous arrangements. We plan to, in the first quarter of this year, which is very soon, to consult the Legislative Council on our specific recommendations and seek to introduce legislative amendments within this year. On the application of innovative technologies, the government has been actively promoting digitalization of public works, applied research and development, and the adoption of new materials and innovative construction technologies in recent years. For example, we have been actively promoting the adoption of modular integrated construction, MIC, since 2017, and a number of projects using this construction method have been completed. There are now more than 60 or 70 projects in the pipeline. With more projects adopting MIC, we expect the productivity of the industry can be uplifted and the progress of housing supply be accelerated. Second, the Chief Executive recently convened a cross-bureau meeting to specifically examine Hong Kong's manpower resources and found that there appeared to be challenges in terms of both talents and labor. Various policy bureaus are exploring relevant policies and specific measures for discussion by the LegCo in various sectors. The CE also put forward a proposal earlier this month to reorganize the government structure, including consolidating the currently policy portfolios on manpower development and transferring them to the Labor and Welfare Bureau. The proposed consolidation will enable the government to take a holistic view on Hong Kong's manpower on labor resources and formulate policies for implementation by the relevant departments. The government will be more proactive on the policy front after the consolidation, with a view to broadening and enriching the talent and manpower pool for Hong Kong to meet economic development and other needs. In respect of construction manpower, the Development Bureau collaborates with the Construction Industry Council, the CIC, to implement a host of multi-pronged measures, including conducting regular manpower forecasts for professionals, technicians, and workers, enhancing training and introducing advanced technologies to uplift productivity. For training, the Hong Kong Institute of Construction under the CIC provides training to an average of about 4,000 full-time trainees and 58,000 part-time trainees every year for meeting the market demand and enhancing the skill level of the construction industry. In the past 10 years, the government has allocated a total of $620 million funding to the CIC, subsidizing the training of 30,000 skilled workers. Moreover, we launched the 1 billion Construction Innovation and Technology Fund to promote wider adoption of innovative technologies in the industry to enhance productivity so as to meet the future manpower demand. As at the end of 2021, the CITF has approved more than 570 million, benefiting more than 830 enterprises for adoption of advanced construction technologies and subsidized about 11,000 training places. We will continue to work with the CIC to train new entrants specifically for trades in keen demand, and at the same time provide training for upskilling the semi-skilled workers to skilled workers for career advancement, so that the industry can attract and retain talents and enhance productivity. Regarding professionals and skilled talents, the Development Bureau will continue to convey the views of the construction industry and manpower needs to the Education Bureau so as to ensure that the tertiary institutions can train sufficient talents to meet the needs of the industry. Third, the government has been continuously implementing capital works to improve people's quality of life, promote economic development, and enhance Hong Kong's long-term competitiveness. With long-term planning, the relevant projects will be implemented in a timely and orderly manner. Although the funding approved by LegCo fluctuates each year, the annual capital works expenditure has been maintained at a level of 70 billion to 80 billion in the past few years and is expected to grow continuously to exceed 100 billion in coming years. Together with the private sector, the total construction output maintained at the level of 250 billion in the past few years. And according to the latest forecast, the output in the next 5 to 10 years will increase to 300 billion. In order to facilitate industry to get prepared and allocate resources to cope with future large-scale development, the government and CIC will continue to disseminate above information to the industry and the public regularly, and to maintain close contact with the industry stakeholders. We will also actively adopt advanced technology and innovative construction techniques to uplift the productivity and capacity of the construction industry. Thank you. Dr. LO Wai-kwok, President. Well, this is the latest information in 2022. We see that compared to last year, there's been a drop in those who are sitting for the Hong Kong diploma exam by 3.5%. So this shows that there are actually a worry in the labor market, and that not only affects the construction industry and not only for some members in public. We see that we do see a shortage of manpower in all industries. So how are we going to ensure that we'll be able to meet the demands of manpower needs in the future, including all industries? Would you update us with the figures on a frequent basis? Secretary, thank you, Dr. Lo, for your question. I did mention in my main reply that the CIC is now working on a manpower assessment, and we hope that we will be able to see results by the end of the third quarter. In the past, we've mainly focused on skilled workers and frontline workers, but this time, as Dr. Lo has mentioned, we're also looking into professionals. and we will look into the needs for the future 5 to 10 years. We're not only going to focus on this year. And once we have the results, we're going to disseminate the information to the public. Mr. Kenneth Lau. President, Hon Yi-kwok is happy to see that the development is looking into a transportation-oriented policy for the northern metropolis. And of course, we're going to work together to ensure that the northern part of the new territories will become a new engine for Hong Kong. But we estimate that there will be an increase in population in the area, and there would be further pressure on the current railway. So other than 5 plans on matters relating to railways, would you also consider our recommendation to build a highway from Cheung Kwan O to Ho Chung in Chi-kwong, passing through Tai Shui Hang and reaching Hon Yun Wai, so that it will be able to alleviate the transportation congestion in the northern part of the new territories, to set up a more extensive network so that they will be able to really grasp the opportunities of connecting with the Greater Bay Area. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lau, for your question on planning on transportation network in the new territories. That is under the Transport and Housing Bureau. But I'll try my best to answer the question. Actually, we are able to see that towards the west, we have highway number 11. And in the northern metropolis, there would also be a cross-boundary railway that we are considering at this moment. With the artificial island being built, we would also be able to have roads leading to Tuen Mun. So that would be the west. But Mr. Lau is asking about the east. Under the Transport and Housing Bureau, they are working on a research, and we thank the LegCo for providing us with funding to work on that study. So they looked into the research after 2030. I would, of course, bring your recommendation, Mr. Lau, back to the Transport and Housing Bureau to see whether they will take this into consideration. Mr. Kwok, thank you, President. So an infrastructure project from planning to seeking approval and to receiving funding would take many years. In the Secretary's reply, although you did mention about the CIC and also the Labor Department working on training, we'll take Kai-tak as an example. Why is there actually insufficient labor in a certain job right now? Are there any loopholes in the industry so that we do not have enough manpower for certain or particular jobs? Would that actually affect our development in the northern metropolis? Thank you for your question. Well, we never know for sure the manpower shortage percentage. And Mr. Kwok, I do agree with you. It takes time to train workers. And this has always been a policy in Hong Kong. I think you're talking about enhancing or the SLS. So, and of course, the main focus would be on local workers for this supplementary labor scheme. So for 4 weeks, if we are not able to seek the labor needed, then we would try to import labor through the supplementary labor scheme. How are we going to meet the needs of manpower? I did actually mention this in my main reply. We need to train local workers and professionals, and at the same time to ensure that we'll be able to retain the workers. We also want to enhance productivity. In recent years, we've been promoting MIC, and in the upcoming years, we're also going to continue adopting the MIC model. That would help us enhance productivity. And we, of course, would import labor if there is a need, but that, of course, we under certain restrictions as well. Dr. Wong Yun-shan. Thank you, President. The Secretary talked about MIC, although in 2019 about so we could actually waive the 6% GFA concession using MIC. Do you have other policies to review the exemption percentage, or would you consider to roll this out in other housing developments that are less than 20,000 units? Secretary, I did in my reply talked about the adoption of modular integrated construction. Well, before 2017, we never adopted this method. Well, here you can see that in the reply, I put down 60 MIC projects, but this morning I checked the figures and it's already been increased to 70. Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Frank Chan, has given us the news that about 20,000 housing units will be built under the MIC method. We now have a 6% concession, as Dr. Wong Yun-shan said. The industry, in general, seems that is a very small percentage. We have heard your views, and we are now studying whether we could actually relax this a bit. But I'm afraid I cannot give you any information today. Mr. Chen Siu-hong. I agree with Dr. LO Wai-kwok, and I would like to specify more on innovative technologies. The government's tried to remove red tape and try to streamline procedures, also to use innovative technologies to speed up the identification of land supply. I see that the government has been trying to use more innovative technologies, such as using MIC in construction. I'd like to ask the administration whether you would use a BIM, GIS in infrastructure projects, and then to put this as a basic requirement under the tender to encourage the industry to enhance efficiency and enhance productivity at the same time ensuring construction safety. Secretary, thank you, President, and thank you, Mr. Chen Siu-hong, for your suggestions. When we open a project for tender, we must ensure that it is done in a fair manner. We do not only look at the price in a tender, we also look into the technologies. Any technology that can be introduced to enhance productivity and ensure safety will reduce the need to work at heights, and that would be much safer for construction workers. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, President. Secretary, I'd like to ask a question on land supply. Hong Kong does not lack land supply. But then there's actually will need to remove red tape and streamline procedures to open up more land for land use. We also we know that it's difficult to acquire land or to resume land. And actually, it's not interesting to the public. And sometimes you can see that people talk about liaising between public and private sector. Would you try to overcome all the obstacles and to try to resolve all these issues one by one in a speedy manner? Secretary, thank you, Dr. Hong, for your question. Simply put, we will improve ourselves. The government has been trying to do this. Upcoming, we are going to make some legislative amendments to remove repetitive procedures. We want to handle it in an expeditious manner. But of course, we also need to consider how we use public money. We play two roles. We are the facilitator, and at the same time, we are also the regulator. The government will try our best to work with the private sector. We hope to be able to also to consider with our land sharing scheme as well.
Question for Ms. Elizabeth QUAT. A number of members of the public have indicated that there is a long-standing serious imbalance in housing supply and demand in Hong Kong, with housing production targets unmet. As a result, people are increasingly living in more expensive and smaller units. They urge the government to use smart technology as much as possible in planning new development areas and implementing redevelopment projects for old districts to shorten the time needed for planning, land identification, and housing production. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As the government launched a geospatial lab or GeoLab last year, it is learned that the related Common Spatial Data Infrastructure or CSDI will soon be in full operation. How the government will make use of the GeoLab and CSDI to speed up the search for idle land, as well as to develop and make proper planning for lands in new development areas. 2. It is known that the use of smart technology, such as building information modeling, the Geographic Information System, Internet of Things, Big Data, designed for manufacture and assembly, modular integrated construction, as well as multi-trade integrated mechanical, electrical, and plumbing for housing production can expedite the completion of building construction and improve worksite safety. How the government will make good use of these technologies to enhance efficiency in building construction and management, improve energy efficiency, and improve air quality to provide residents with quality and safe living environment. And 3, as the use of smart technology for land identification and housing production requires cooperation among different departments, but it is known that relevant policy bureaus currently have no command over one another and barriers exist among departments, thus slowing down the development progress. How the government integrates databases among relevant departments and breaks down its compartmentalized structure within which bureaus and departments work in their own silos so as to speed up the progress of digitalization. Secretary for Development. President, the government has been encouraging departments to use innovation and technology to enhance public services, support policy making, and improve people's quality of life. After consulting the Innovation and Technology Bureau, my reply to Ms. QUAT's question is as follows. 1. Government departments and public organizations have been producing, collecting, and using various data, many of which contain location components such as road network, slopes, population statistics, etc. These spatial data used in combination with the Geographic Information System or GIS technology facilitates various tasks, including urban planning, land management, construction works, and urban renewal. For example, the Lands Department makes use of GIS technology to manage land administration related data and provides different spatial data such as topographic map, land boundary, aerial photo, etc. to departments through different platforms to support their work. The Planning Department also uses GIS to integrate and analyze planning and development related information from different departments, such as statutory planning information, terrain, population projections, heritage, etc., to formulate development parameters and layout, and conducting a variety of urban design analyses such as visual line, ridgeline, sunlight, and landscape analysis, etc. The Urban Renewal Information System, or URIS, developed by the Urban Renewal Authority in 2019, strengthens its ability in processing and analyzing spatial data, enhancing the efficiency in planning, rehousing, finance, and technological research, and thereby expediting the formulation of urban renewal plans. The Development Bureau, with support from the ITB, is spearheading the development of this Common Spatial Data Infrastructure, or CSDI, and its portal, providing a one-stop data platform with location as the common language to open up and share spatial data, minimizing redundancy of efforts among departments in maintaining and processing data, thereby supporting decision-making and enhancing work efficiency. The CSDI portal is targeted to go live by phases for free government and public use by the end of the year. By then, the portal will initially release over 500 spatial datasets from different departments covering aspects such as planning, lands, buildings, works, population, transport, etc. The Hong Kong Geodata Store, the alpha version of the CSDI portal, has been launched and released over 200 spatial datasets for initial use by users. The development of CSDI will further expand the possibilities for the use of spatial data. For instance, Plan D is developing an application for government, institution, and community facilities and open space analysis, which makes use of spatial data of the portal to facilitate the analysis of future demand for these facilities based on population projection. The application is expected to be available for use by the relevant departments by the end of the year. As for the Geospatial Lab, or GeoLab, established in mid-2021, its aim is to provide a platform to encourage the younger generation, startups, and creative minds to explore and exchange ideas, develop new applications, thereby promoting business opportunities and improving quality of life. The Development Bureau will continue to review the operation of the GeoLab to promote the CSDI and its applications. 2. Government departments and public organizations have been encouraging the industries to use technology to enhance work efficiency and improve the living environment. For example, the government has been vigorously promoting the digitalization of public works. We have specified in new capital works contracts with value exceeding $300 million the requirement to adopt a digital works supervision system, or DWSS, in order to strengthen project supervision. So far, over 100 active public works contracts have adopted the DWSS. We are also exploring the use of remote monitoring, wireless sensors, technology, Internet of Things, and other innovative technology to enhance site safety, workmanship, and the efficiency in contract management. Since 2018, the Building Information Modeling, or BIM technology, has been adopted in major government capital works projects. The government has been working with the Construction Industry Council to support and promote the adoption of BIM technology and innovative construction technologies. The Buildings Department is also pushing ahead with the development of an electronic submission hub, or ESH, allowing the industry to submit building plans and applications required under the Buildings Ordinance electronically, allowing departments to process such through the ESH. The ESH can streamline the approval process and encourage wider and greater use of BIM by the industry. The government encourages the use of innovative technology, including smart, remote, and IT, and the adoption of user-oriented architectural design to promote sustainable development and green buildings, to enhance management efficiency on energy conservation, waste reduction, etc., and improving indoor environment and air quality to achieve better quality of life. In addition, the government will continue to promote innovative construction methodologies, including the multi-trade integrated mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, or MIMEP, and modular integrated construction. At present, the MIC has been adopted in the construction works of over 60 projects, including many public and non-government organization projects. 3. The government is developing the CSDI portal in order to facilitate the integration, exchange, and sharing of spatial data. We require all departments to submit an annual spatial data plans to set out the data sets they plan to release in the coming 3 years. The first set of data plans was published on government websites at the end of last year. All data sets to be released on the CSDI portal must comply with the standards. We will provide assistance during the data standardization process. In addition to spatial data, the government is committed to integrating and opening up different categories of data to promote data sharing among departments. Currently, over 4,800 data sets are available on the public sector information portal for free public access. We will continue to review these measures to facilitate the opening up of data by departments in a timely manner and enhance data integration to support the government's work and meeting the society's needs. Ms. Quat, the public wants to see faster housing production so that they can enjoy larger flats. The government said technology would be deployed to improve work's efficiency and improve people's quality of life. But how can this be achieved? Communication would be very important. And in March 2020, a new public information dashboard was released, including information on the pandemic. As of the 14th of this month, there were 62 million visits to the dashboard already. Would the government consider providing an interactive dashboard on land and housing to allow the public to monitor the progress of land and housing production? Secretary, thank you. This is our strategy, but as for the data sets that could apply, we need to give it careful consideration. Some sites could be are currently available to the public through short-term tenancies, and such data sets are made available already. For planning-related data, professional expertise is required. But as a policy, we will look to open up more data sets, and this is something we will continue to embrace. We have opened up more than 200 data sets as of the end of last year. The figure will grow to 500 in mid-2020. I answered a question from Ms. Starry Lee. I said that by the end of 2020, we expected to see more than 240 data sets, and now we have opened more than double that number. Mr. Andrew Lam. President, back in 2004, the government completed and announced a study on how planning-related data could be integrated involving 3 bureaus and 13 departments. The report recommended that the work be completed by the first quarter of 2006. Personally, I believe I saw that the government had vision in the relevant work, but progress has been extremely slow. The Secretary talked about integrating data platforms of different departments, and spatial data would be opened up by different departments in the next 3 years. I'd like to know when the integration of data between departments could be completed in order to facilitate Hong Kong's upcoming developments. In 2004, the departments involved, including Lands Planning Department, the Highways Department, Drainage Services Department, Water Supplies Department, etc., So how can we complete the integration of different data platforms to facilitate projects such as Lantau, Tomorrow Vision, and other urban renewal projects? On a micro level, that is data sharing relating to the Development Bureau, and on a macro level or a city level, I would defer to the Undersecretary. By the end of this year, the number of data sets open up will grow to more than 500, and about 170 will be under our ambit. It's about data standardization. Different departments might embrace different standards, and with proper conversion, the data could be integrated. We believe the work could be completed by the end of the year. The planning department does not only rely on the CSDI portal, and they would also have their own analysis tools. Very often, Plan D is responsible for sourcing land, and their work has been efficient. A few months ago, they have been making site visits, and they are now able to access data through tablets. As for the urban perspective, I would defer to the Undersecretary. For the Smart City Blueprint, it is now at version 2.0. And the blueprint would include the sharing of various data. And on the public sector information platform, different data sets are available, and that includes real-time data. The number of APIs provided exceed 1,800, and this facilitates use by third parties. And these include public services, transport data, etc. In terms of electronic government services, they are also being enhanced. And under smart regulation, we have enhanced more than 4,800 electronic license application services, and for more than 80% of the services, submissions or applications could be made electronically. We would also revamp or update our digitalization policy on a regular basis. And we would also report progress to the ITB panel on a regular basis. Mr. Tony Chair. President, making proper use of technology and big data can bring a lot of benefits, including expediting land and housing production, speeding up design, lowering construction costs, facilitating maintenance, etc. The Secretary said in his main reply that in terms of using big data and digitalization, the government has been putting in work. And for new projects, support would be offered. But I'd like to know whether the government has reviewed existing contracts in terms of quantity surveying. More than 10 years of records must be retained. Would that be a waste of resources? For existing contracts, the obligations have been stipulated already. But so long as both parties agree, certain provisions of the contract could be revised. So we are happy to provide support in that case. Realistically, it would not be very meaningful to review existing contracts, so this is not something we would pursue. Dr. Wang Yunshan. First, I'd like to thank the government for pursuing the annual spatial data plans. As we know, there's a lot of concern on the waiting time for public housing, and 350 hectares of land is required to create 300,000 public housing units in the next 10 years. Will the government open up relevant data so that the public can access details related to the 350 hectares of land so that they would have a better idea on the housing production process? If you look at sites for public housing over the past 5 years, the Transport and Housing Bureau actually created a table but in terms of visualizing such data in the form of a map, the data actually belong to the THB, so this is something I will look at. For the next 5-year period, the data provided might not be as specific or accurate. But perhaps we can still come up with visualized data in this regard. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, the government has been promoting the use of smart technology. As an engineer, I see that smart technology is not prevalent in Hong Kong, especially the use of smart technology in housing identification and production. Hong Kong is lagging far behind other places. So is the government committed in reinforcing their efforts? The use of smart technology can enhance building or energy efficiency. Will the government establish clearer goals and a roadmap? The government should speed up their work, and we should properly implement smart technology in our daily lives to improve people's quality of life. Thank you. Thank you very much for the reminder. Indeed, we are committed on this front. We are now at Smart City Blueprint 2.0 with the proper timelines for the Development Bureau. In the coming years, we will be adopting BIM technology more extensively, and we will also facilitate the electronic submission of plans and applications, and that would greatly improve our efficiency. In terms of the building or construction area, the data could be accessed through the hub efficiently, and this would be fully implemented by 2025.
Question number 5, Mrs. Regina IP. President, some comments have pointed out that there is a serious shortage of land in Hong Kong, although the government has announced that it will develop a northern metropolis of up to 300 square kilometers to provide more land. Land supply cannot be resolved in the short term. On the other hand, it has been reported that while Kwai Tsing Container Terminals, KTCT, can handle more than 18 billion static containers per year, its container throughput has dropped continuously in recent years from 17 billion static containers in 2010 to 14 billion in 2020, down by more than 15% in 10 years. In this connection, will government inform this council whether it has studied relocating some of the KCTCT operations to other parts in Hong Kong or even to mainland cities of the GBA so as to release part of the KTCT site for development purposes. Secretary for Transport and Housing, President. Having consulted the Development Bureau, my reply to the question is as follows. The central government has all along been supporting the development of maritime and logistics industry, including the consolidation of Hong Kong's position as an international maritime center. The outline of the 14th Five-Year Plan for National Economic and Social Development of the PRC and the long-range objectives through the year 2035, as endorsed by the 13th NPC on the 11th March 2021, and outline development plan for the GBA as promulgated, also support the development of high value-added maritime services in Hong Kong to better facilitate Hong Kong and Macau's integration into the country's development. As an international maritime center, the significance of the ports to Hong Kong's economy is beyond dispute. The port and maritime industry as an integral part of the trading and logistics industry, which is one of the 4 key pillar industries, accounting for 1/5 of our GDP and 16.8% of total employment. Despite the challenges from the rapid development of other ports in the GBA in recent years, the Hong Kong port, with an estimated throughput of 18 million TEUs in 2021, has maintained its position as one of the top 10 ports in the world and is renowned for its quality. It ranks 7th globally in the Container Port Performance Index launched by the World Bank, reflecting its efficient and quality services. The Hong Kong port has also earned its reputation as a catch-up port, meaning if vessels are spending longer time than expected elsewhere, they can catch up the time in Hong Kong. More than 90% of Hong Kong's freight volume is transported by water, including food, beverages, pharmaceuticals, construction materials, and other daily necessities. During the COVID pandemic over the past 2 years, the incessant operation of Hong Kong's container terminals has played an instrumental role in securing a stable supply of food and other daily necessities. In other words, there is a need for Hong Kong to retain its container terminals and maintain its current handling capacity. As regards the location, apart from the well-equipped berthing facilities, sufficient yard space, backup land are required for port operations. The Kwai Tsing Container Terminals handled over 80% of Hong Kong's total container throughput in 2021, with approximately 270 international container vessel sailings per week, connecting to nearly 600 destinations worldwide. The KTCT serves as a major transshipment hub in Asia, with well-established infrastructure and supporting facilities, including a transport network with extensive connectivity. The KTCT at the existing site not only is conducive to the interface between various supporting facilities, but also brings synergy to the development of the surrounding backup land. The government understands the Mrs. Yip is proposing to relocate the terminals to release land for other uses in the short term. However, it is not an easy task to identify land for an international container terminal of similar scale and supporting infrastructures. The relocation requires holistic consideration of a whole host of factors, including port planning, land requirement, land use compatibility, environmental considerations, water flow, marine channels, road connections, and other infrastructure requirements, as well as sustainable development. We may make reference to the Singapore's relocation of its container terminals. As early as 2012, Singapore decided to consolidate its container terminals and construct and relocate to the Tuas port in phases. The relocation project is expected to be completed in 2040s. It's noteworthy that the government has been making every effort to increase land supply and is spearheading major works, including the northern metropolis and artificial islands in the central waters. We have to bear in mind that Hong Kong's economic status as a trading, logistics, and maritime center hinges on the container terminals, which is also affecting our employment and livelihood. Moreover, the relocation will take a considerable period of time, including identifying and leveling a large area of land, providing transport and infrastructure facilities to support terminal operations, building terminal facilities, and so on. As such, freeing up the land in Kwai Tsing from relocation may not be materialized anytime soon. As compared with other options, the relocation will not make available land earlier or give rise to a net increase in land in general, and could hardly resolve the land supply shortage in the near to medium term. We will consider studying the land development of the KTCTs, having regard to the needs of Hong Kong's economic and social development. President Hong Kong Port is operating smoothly. We will continue to enhance its competitiveness. We will continue to monitor the development of the Hong Kong Port, including the changes in cargo throughput, to ensure that necessary port facilities and port-related infrastructures can be provided in a timely manner to support port development. The Undersecretary for Development is also present today. We will carefully listen and respond to the questions raised by members. Thank you. Mrs. Regina IP. I am so unhappy with the reply. There is no new idea. There is no long-term plan, no strategy, no nothing. Now, your predecessor, the director of TDD, Zhao Jiking, said in writing that it's not appropriate to build on the terminal because of the light pollution and noise pollution, but the container terminals can be reconstructed in phases, and CT1 and 5 closer to urban areas can be developed earlier, and we need to keep CT8 on Stonecutters Island and CT9 on Cheng Yi. We need to have 8 berths facilities, and the backup area can be reduced and planned. The anti-brownfield sites can be used or recycled for further development. Your predecessor said that this can be happening in phases. Why don't you put on your thinking cap in this area? Secretary. President, thanks very much, Mrs. Yip, for the comments. Now we need to have a seamless interface between the old and new container terminal. The Kwai Chung terminal is operating round the clock, and any reprovisioning will have to make sure that there will be a seamless interface and transition without affecting the operation. Like Mrs. Yip said a moment ago, we need to reprovision in phases if we have to relocate the terminal, and how can we make sure that we can minimize the impact on the operation. Other than the terminals, the yard site, the parking spaces, and the logistics center will have to be connected to achieve the synergy effect. We understand that the Kwai Tsing Container Terminals are hitting 70% of its capacity in ordinary days, or 90%, 80% during the peak. So the yard space, the backup land, and also the berthing facilities will have to be coordinated. We heard Mrs. Yip's comments. Of course, we will send and make a response to this. Ms. Alice Mack, I think the government ought to consider Mrs. Yip's suggestion. From your reply, you mentioned the 14th five-year plan, and Hong Kong is being developed into a high value-added maritime center. Now, Mr. Secretary, you look at the Kwai Chung Container Terminal, is it really a good place for development of maritime services? You talked about the connectivity with the neighboring area and the backup area. Where is the backup land in Kwai Tsing? They've been built on. The backup areas that were used before have been built on for high value-added logistics center, and we're losing all these backup land, and the areas have been shifted to the brownfield sites. I think in order to achieve the purpose of the 14th five-year plan, I think we have to identify a suitable location to relocate the container terminal. There is connectivity that is not good enough. Now, we suggested a footbridge be built, and this has never materialized, and there are only 2 minibuses servicing the workers there, and the people are really jaywalking there all over the place, and this is not enjoying good connectivity. Back in the 70s, 80s, this may be an ideal location, but in this day and age, I think we have to identify a suitable location. So, Mr. Secretary, will you be providing the right location for high value-added maritime development? Will you be identifying suitable location? Secretary, thanks very much, Ms. Alice Mack. In terms of land use, the Kwai Tsing Container Terminals cover 279 hectares, and there is 100 hectares of STT land, short-term tenancy, and we also have the logistics center. And on the drawing board is a plot of land in Kwai Tsing, another plot of land in Chengyi for the development of high value-added maritime centers. In 2021, we've already sold one of the pieces. And the other piece will be launched in the early part of 2020. The first bit will be closed in March. And all these are intended to make preparation for the development of maritime services. Now, there are some yard sites that are located in the NT because of the land constraint. Now, in Hon Shui-kiu, in the northern metropolis, there's going to be a focal point for high value-added logistics service. And for Kwai Tsing, perhaps I can defer to the Undersecretary for Development to talk about the planning. Undersecretary. President, to partially reprovision the Kwai Tsing Container Terminals, I think we have to have a thorough, holistic consideration. If you convert that to other purposes, we have to consider the compatibility issue. We have to consider other technical issues, and all these would take a pretty long time if we develop this from now in the medium and short and medium term. We have other options. So we are adopting a multi-pronged approach to create land. For larger land sites for land supply, we have the Central Waters Artificial Island. In 2026, reclamation will go ahead. In 2030, population intake will take place. And Kutong North, Fanling North, Hon Shui-kiu, Harchun NDAs. Because of the northern metropolis, this will not be a distant prospect. We expect that 500,000 units are proposed there, and 40% will be coming down the track in the coming 10 years. If you were to set aside some of the land in Kwai Tsing Container Terminal for reprovisioning or for redevelopment, this will be no faster than any of the plans that they will have on the drawing board. Mr. Dominic Lee. Thank you very much, President. I heard from the Undersecretary his reply. I feel a little bit disappointed because it's not really talking about anything relevant to this question. He's talking about the northern metropolis. it seems to us that you're not really minded to do it. Mr. Michael Wong, said that Cheung South, that there will be a plan, the collecting the water data and so on. I'm not sure how far along this study is. Now, for the Kwai Tsing Container Terminal, 380 hectares, there is 100 hectares, which is devoted to backup area, which you have already built on. Even if we're not reprovisioning the container terminal, why don't you release the backup land for building purposes? You may say that there are some plans that 100 hectares cover a vast area. You may not be building on the entire 100 hectares, but at least you can set aside a part of the 100 hectares for housing purposes in order to boost housing and supply. Secretary, President. My colleague referred to the cooperation with the mainland in terms of port. In 2018, in the GPA Outline Development Plan, Hong Kong and Guangdong will be achieving the synergy effect. We're going to strengthen the port cluster and enhance our competitiveness. In the 14th Five-Year Plan last year, it supports Hong Kong's development as an international maritime center. In Guangzhou, Yantian, and also all the rest of the ports are having their own competitive edges, and we have a good division of labor. Hong Kong is very high efficient with good connectivity and covers a vast area. Hong Kong is very much a transshipment center. Shenzhen, Guangzhou ports, they are closer to the production base and the source of commodities, and they're dealing with the PRD and the western part of the PRD. And Shenzhen is dealing with the eastern part of the PRD. We do have our own positioning. We are complementary to one another, and in providing the port services in the Greater Bay Area. We'll be liaising with Guangdong and Guangxi authorities in order to achieve full cooperation. Now, for the Cheung South, I defer to the Undersecretary. Yes, please. President, thanks very much, Mr. Lee, for the comments. The Kwai Tsing container terminals, if they are used as container terminals, there is no way we can claw back any part of the land for development. For Cheung South, we've heard from the community when we conducted the study that in Cheung South we can have reclamation and relocate the container terminal. In the central waters, in the artificial island, we are focusing on the Khao Yi Chao artificial island and the related road and rail measuring 1,000 hectares. We will also be collecting hydrology data from Cheung South as part of our efforts to conduct further studies. So, Mr. Lee, rest assured, we will be collecting the fundamental data if necessary. Going forward, we will be harnessing all these information to study the feasibility study. For these studies, we'll be collating the data, and like I said earlier, we will certainly consider these for the appropriate purposes. Ms. Jovi Chan. President, thank you. A moment ago, I heard from the Secretary repeating 2030 plus and the 14 five-year plan, and also 2035, a long-range objectives. They were all in support of this, and we're aware of this. Now, for reprovisioning the Kwai Tsing Container Terminal, this will not be any faster than the Northern Metropolis and the Central Waters Artificial Island. Do we have any roadmap, any timetable? We have looked at the Singaporean example. The Secretary mentioned the relocation They started the consideration in 2012, and the relocation will not materialize until 2040s. In Singapore, they have the state enterprise, and there is no question of compensation. In Hong Kong, what progress have you achieved in terms of the alternative siting of the container terminals? Do you have a timetable, any roadmap to share? Secretary, President, in terms of port development in Hong Kong, the government has a very clear direction and focus, and this is indispensable. And second, to relocate the container terminals. When should we do it? Now, relocating the container terminals to release the land, if this is the purpose, the Undersecretary for Development and myself have already addressed the issue of land supply. In terms of the operating capacity, if we are to increase the capacity, I must say that we're hitting 70–80% in ordinary times and 80–90% during the peak. There is room for further development. But as I said, in Guangdong and other parts of the PRD, we do have a different positioning. We're doing transshipment mainly. We certainly consider these were appropriate.
Last question seeking oral reply. Mr. LAI Tung-kwok. President, quite a number of members of the public have relayed their dissatisfaction in time lags in the dissemination of messages, such as notifications of compulsory testing notices and exposure notifications in respect of the coronavirus disease 2019 by the LeaveHomeSafe mobile application, also known as LeaveHomeSafe. In addition, users need to, through the small screens of their mobile phones, read the relevant press releases, which are up to thousands of words, and search through tables of a number of pages before they come to know the dates on which and the numbers of times for which they are required to undergo compulsory testing. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. If it has gained an understanding of the time generally taken from the government's dissemination of the 2 aforesaid notifications through LeaveHomeSafe to users' receipt of them. Second, whether it has set up a mechanism to handle the following situation. A LeaveHomeSafe user visited a number of venues, and such venues were also visited by a confirmed patient at about the same time, resulting in the user receiving a number of the aforesaid notifications and the dates on which the user is required to undergo compulsory testing overlapping, or the user having to undergo testing for several consecutive days. And 3. Whether it has plans to improve the user experience of LeaveHomeSafe, for example, setting out the dates on which and the number of times for which users are required to undergo testing in the notifications of compulsory testings, and by making reference to the practice of providing real-time visitor flow information of the various community testing centers and mobile specimen collection stations through LeaveHomeSafe, so as to facilitate members of the public to choose locations with fewer visitors for undergoing testing, thereby alleviating their suffering from lining up and waiting for testing. Secretary for Innovation and Technology. President, the HKSAR government has been committed to using various technology solutions to assist in the anti-epidemic work over the past 2 years. On one hand, we have made continuous efforts to enhance the effectiveness of various technological anti-epidemic measures to support the anti-epidemic strategy of guarding against the importation of cases and the spread of domestic infections. On the other hand, we also assisted members of the public to better cope with the pandemic under the new normal, as well as to prepare for the economic recovery. Apart from large-scale testing and vaccination, a rapid and effective contact tracing is also crucial to the prevention of the spread of virus in the community. Having due regard to the anti-epidemic needs and actual situation of the community, the government launched in November 2020 the LeaveHomeSafe mobile app to provide members of the public with a convenient digital tool for recording the time of the visits to different venues without the need for real-time registration of personal details. Such visit records are encrypted and stored in the app of the user's mobile phones. With regard to Mr. Lai Tung-kwok's question in consultation with the Food and Health Bureau, my replies are as follows. 1. Generally speaking, the app will send notifications of exposure risk or compulsory testing notices provided by the Center for Health Protection to users on an hourly basis. When users connect their mobile phones to the internet service, the LeaveHomeSafe mobile app will check the system for updates, automatically downloading the latest information of visit records of the confirmed or suspected confirmed patients during the communicable period and perform matching with the user's visit records in their mobile phones to generate notifications to remind concerned users to undergo testing as soon as possible so as to reduce the risk of further spread of the virus. The time that individual users who will actually receive notifications may be affected by various factors such as their network service and phone operation, as all data matching and notification issuing will only be performed in the user's mobile phone, and the results will be also stored in the user's mobile phone only. We do not have statistics on the actual time it takes for users to receive notification of exposure risk or CTNs. Therefore, we recommend that users connect their mobile phones to the internet regularly to receive notifications of exposure risk or CTNs as early as possible. The LeaveHomeSafe app is not designed for a tracing purpose, but the CHP is empowered by law to require confirmed patients to upload their visit records to a central database of the Department of Health to assist in conducting epidemiological investigations, tracing the paths along which the virus spread, and identifying high-risk individuals in order to break the chain of transmission in the community as early as possible. The visit records uploaded by confirmed patients will also assist the CHP in sending notifications of exposure risk and CTNs through the app to visitors who have visited the same venue that a confirmed patient has visited at about the same time, requiring them to undergo compulsory testing as stipulated by the notice. So far, the LeaveHomeSafe mobile app has issued notifications of over 10,250 venues to the public about the infection risk. Over 320,000 citizens have undergone testing at the testing centers after receiving their LeaveHomeSafe notifications. 7 preliminary positive cases have been found, including 3 cases with Omicron variant. The LeaveHomeSafe mobile app will send notifications to users on the advice of the CHP, prompting them to check the content of the CTNs. Those who fall into the category specified in the CTNs must undergo testing as soon as possible according to the procedures specified in the CTNs. The CTNs will prescribe different testing requirements and details, including the number of tests and the respective deadlines, depending on the risk of each venue. Should the risk of exposure increase under latest epidemic development, new CTNs may be issued for the same venue with updated testing requirements. The LeaveHomeSafe mobile app will issue notifications for each CTN as soon as practicable to enable respective users to know their risk situation. If a user has visited multiple high-risk places or the relevant place is subject to multiple CTNs, it is possible for the user to receive multiple notifications on CTN, while the user should undergo one test on each of the required testing dates in accordance with the testing requirements specified in the relevant notices. Recently, to guard against the Omicron variant from spreading in the community, the government has tightened the compulsory testing arrangement to identify possibly infected persons by increasing the testing frequency of persons who have been to places visited by cases confirmed or suspected to be carrying the Omicron variant at an early stage, with a view to achieving early identification, early isolation, and early treatment of the infected. Starting from December 31st, 2021, residences, workplaces, and places visited by persons of all cases confirmed suspected to be carrying the Omicron variant will be included in the CTN. Persons who resided, worked, and visited the relevant premises will be subject to compulsory testing on specified dates. The CTNs will specify the required testing dates. Given the high transmissibility of the Omicron variant, members of the public who visited the high-risk places included in the CTNs should undergo testing on the required testing dates pursuant to the requirement of the relevant notices. Third, since the launch of LeaveHomeSafe mobile app, the government has made continuous efforts to enhance the app for improving user experience with due consideration to the feedback from the public and the industry, including the launch of version 2.0 in June 2021 to enable the public to store their vaccination and testing records in the app for easy display where necessary, and the launch of version 3.0 in December 2021 to support the implementation of the Hong Kong Health Code. The CHP has already enhanced the content of the CTNs to list out the number of tests and required testing deadlines in a clear manner. Members of the public can utilize the 24-hour online booking system of community testing centers, which shows the booking status of testing centers in the coming 2 weeks, including any available quotas or full bookings at individual centers on the day of booking and subsequent days. They only need to provide simple personal information and can then select a suitable center and time slot for testing. The CTCs will accord priority to serve individuals with advanced bookings to minimize the waiting time. In view of recent suspected transmission chains in certain areas, relevant residents and workers have heeded the government's call for voluntary testing, resulting in a large increase in testing demand. The government has arranged to publicize information on COVID situation in some temporary specified testing service points in busy areas such as the Kwai Tsing Estate. The Home Affairs Department would also arrange staff to remind those in queue to visit service points with shorter queues. We will maintain contact with relevant departments and contractors, closely monitor the usage and demand at service points, and adjust testing service arrangements in accordance with the circumstances. We will continue to, having regard to the anti-epidemic needs, explore various technical solutions so as to carry out more precise and effective anti-epidemic work under the vaccine bubble and to improve the user experience. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Mr. Lai for asking this question. The Undersecretary for Food and Health and I are happy to answer your questions. Mr. LAI Tung-kwok, President, those who complain have said that they only receive the CTNs after the confirmed cases have been confirmed for over 2 days, which is way too slow. They also need to click on the link to go into the page of the notification of the compulsory testing notice and to read through 4,000 words and then to click into the annex once again to search through all those pages before they know exactly which days they need to undergo testing. In the third part of the reply, the Secretary mentioned improving the details of CTNs. If I understand correctly, you were talking about disseminating public information. I call upon the Secretary to try to put the days of compulsory testing in the first page of the CTNs so that people who receive the notification will know exactly when to undergo testing, which will really convenient users. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lai, for your follow-up question. When the CHP receives notification of confirmed cases, they will exactly follow up on tracing records and look into the epidemiological trace, and the CTNs will be issued. And within an hour, the LeaveHomeSafe app will issue notification to the public. I hope you understand, however, that in the tracing process, CHP needs to spend some time to confirm the situation and then to effectively disseminate the information on testing notices. Even if we try to shorten the notification time, some people may still receive the notification 1 or 2 days after the case is confirmed. I hope you would understand the situation. We also want the public to know of exposure risk as soon as possible, and we will work on improving that. The CHP now has a huge load of work, and they need to deploy their staff in an appropriate manner. We want people to know exactly when they need to undergo compulsory testing through the notifications. But that may also mean more work shouldered by the CHP. We are going to work very closely with the CHP to streamline the process and to send out clear information in an expeditious manner. I hope you'll understand that. When we try to simplify the process, then it will mean more preparation work in advance. We hope to strike a balance to provide information to people as soon as possible, and at the same time to provide a better user experience for the public. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Ngan Man Yu. Thank you, President. When the government issues a CTN on a certain mall, you will be able to see a notification on LeaveHomeSafe app. But if a member of the public only scans the code at a restaurant and not the mall, then he or she will not receive such notification. Can you try to improve that? And now for many residences and for public transportation, there is no need to use the LeaveHomeSafe app. Would you consider adding that in as well? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Ngan, for your question. We appeal to members of the public to use LeaveHomeSafe app wherever they go to better keep a more precise record of their whereabouts. We want to improve user experience, and at the same time we call upon the public to make use of this technology to help us fight the pandemic. Over 100,000 venues now supply the LeaveHomeSafe QR code. Whether you are entering a shopping mall or a restaurant within a shopping mall, please scan it wherever you go. And when you see shops with the LeaveHomeSafe code, even though it is not mandatory, but in order to better protect yourself and your family, to scan the code so as to keep a record. And that will also help the LeaveHomeSafe realize its full potential in disseminating notifications as soon as possible. There are places which do not yet have the LeaveHomeSafe QR code. We welcome any premises to apply to us for a QR code. But even though some who have applied for one, it may not have been put to good use. So we really need to strike a balance here. Mr. Duncan Chiu, I would like to quote the Secretary in order to fight the pandemic, then we must really try to effectively trace the whereabouts. We see that the Omicron variant spreads faster than the dissemination of notifications. I don't think the pandemic will wait for us to increase manpower. Therefore, 15 of us have written a joint letter to suggest using real name in the LeaveHomeSafe app, and then also to bind the vaccination records to the LeaveHomeSafe app by using real name. Would the Secretary consider that suggestion? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chiu, for your question, and I really like to thank you for providing us with recommendations together with your colleagues on how to better fight the pandemic. We are very thankful for that. We would like to improve our tracing and investigation. The LeaveHomeSafe mobile app is a technology to provide people in Hong Kong to record their whereabouts and to notify them of risk. It is not for tracing purposes. But the CHP is empowered to require confirmed patients to update those records. Our tracing investigation is now done by CHB and other relevant departments, and we are continuously improving the process. The vaccination records and the Hong Kong Health Code are new arrangements for our consideration for future tracing purposes. Therefore, we are going to move with the times to see what technology we have on our hands and to provide recommendations for our medical experts so as to implement it as soon as possible. We are also going to use the vaccination record as a tool for fighting the pandemic. Professor Dennis Lam. Thank you, President. The LeaveHomeSafe mobile app has shown results, but if we want to achieve dynamic zero infection, there is still a lot to improve. If we're able to achieve dynamic zero infection, then we want to try to be cost effective in fighting the pandemic. And on August 25th of 2021 in Shanghai, there was a small outbreak, and without locking down the city, they were able to achieve dynamic zero infection within a very short period of time. So, of course, we must act fast and be precise in our work. The first 24 hours is the golden window period in which early identification is needed and to isolate close contacts as soon as possible. In the journey of optimizing the LeaveHomeSafe app, we can also draw reference from the mainland method because they have been very successful, and the health code can actually be integrated with the LeaveHomeSafe app for better use. So I want to ask the Secretary if we can integrate that and to draw reference from the mainland to better apply technology to help us to fight the pandemic. Please be brief, Secretary. Thank you for your suggestion. In the past 2 years, different cities have adopted different methods to fight the pandemic. Shanghai and other mainland cities have been very successful, and we are going to learn humbly from them to help us better our work in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been coming up with new models in fighting the pandemic, and these have all been drawn from examples and methods from other places.
Members' motion with no legislative effect. Ms.